Have you ever longed to be truly seen, not just glanced at, not admired for your beauty, your talents, or how well you keep it together, but see who you are, with your tender parts, your wounds that haven't healed, the blurry parts of you that even you don't fully understand, the parts you often hide, because showing them might hurt. And then, one day, someone looks at you, not for long, not too deep, just enough for your heart to pause. Their gaze doesn't judge, doesn't demand. It's just a gentle light, touching a place inside you that had been forgotten. And you pull back, not because they did anything wrong, but because it felt too real, too close, too much like what you once feared. Because the last time you let someone truly see you, you got hurt, someone laughed, someone walked away. There was no welcome, only silence or coldness. So you learned to hide, you built a mask, you became pleasant, charming, and easy to be around. You became someone everyone liked, except you, and that little child inside you, the one who just wanted to be seen and held, still sits there, waiting for someone to say, "I see you, and I'm not going anywhere." You want to be loved, but you're scared of being fully known. You crave connection, but fear exposure. You've been told you're too sensitive, too much, too emotional. So now, every time someone gets a little closer, you shrink. And you wonder, if you never let anyone truly see you, who's living this life? If you keep shrinking, then who gets to step into the light? Who gets to be loved, to be held, to cry loudly without apologizing? And if you forget the real you beneath all the roles you play, how can anyone else ever find you? Maybe there was a moment when you and someone else just sat in silence. No need to speak, no need to perform, just presence. And in that stillness, something inside you gently unfolded. Not because they understood you, but because they didn't leave. No advice, no judgment, just stayed. And for the first time, you didn't have to act strong. You didn't have to pretend. You just had to be here. Maybe what you fear most isn't being abandoned, but being seen, while you still haven't learned to love yourself. But real light never forces, it never invades, it simply waits, softly, patiently, until the moment you're ready to whisper, "I think, I don't want to hide anymore." And in that moment, you realize being seen was never the problem. The real problem was it that you had forgotten how to see yourself. And now, you're starting to remember. You were once called too much. You cried too much. You dreamed too big. You loved too quickly. You felt too deeply. And when you offered your heart, open, honest, nothing held back, they didn't know how to hold it. They pulled away or pushed it aside. And they told you, you need to toughen up. Stop being so sensitive. This world isn't soft. Back then, you didn't know how to fight back. You were too young to say, "But this is real. This is me." So you went quiet. And from that moment, you began to trim the parts of you that were too much. You spoke less. You dreamed less. You asked for less. You showed up less. You learned to smile to hide the tears. You learned to please just to keep someone close. You learned to be strong, not because you wanted to be, but because it felt like the only choice. Carl Jung once wrote, "Shame is a soul-eating emotion. Shame doesn't just make you feel wrong, it makes you want to disappear." And that feeling, "I'm wrong for being real," that's the wound. The one that started so many of your escapes in life. You started believing you could only be loved if you were less emotional, less needy, less you. And so you wore yourself out, trying to shrink just enough to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. Until one day, you watched someone cry about something that once broke you too, and instead of thinking they were too fragile, you saw beauty, you saw the truth. And then it hit you. You were never weak. You were just rejected, right at the moment you needed to be held. You learned to hide your light, because someone once walked away when you finally let it shine. But that light, it's the way music moves you to tears. It's the spark in your eyes when you talk about what you love. It's the way you sit beside someone, not to fix them, but to truly listen. You've been calling all that too much. But the truth is, it's your gift. You just gave it to people who hadn't yet learned how to receive it. That's not your fault, and it's not theirs either. It just means they weren't ready. But you're still here, with a heart that hasn't gone out completely, with a light still waiting to be seen. And now, the question is no longer, how do I keep them from leaving me? It's, this time, will I have the courage not to leave myself? Have you ever tried to shine? In a room where no one was looking, their eyes skimmed past you like a flashlight sweeping a blank wall. You said something honest. They changed the subject. You smiled. They didn't smile back. You were there, but it felt like you weren't. So, gradually, you started shrinking, softening your voice, going silent before anyone could frown. You still smiled, still cared, still showed kindness, but no one knew who you were anymore. Not because you were fake, but because you had learned how to dim your light. You became like a candle that knew. Every time it dared to burn too brightly, the wind would come. So you pulled the flame inward, covered it with trembling hands, not to stay warm, but to keep it from being snuffed out by glances that couldn't receive you. That is the soul's defense mechanism. It doesn't come from logic, it comes from emotional memory. You had been rejected, you had been laughed at, you had been made to feel ashamed for being real. So you survived the only way you knew how, by never letting anyone truly see you again. Carl Jung called this the creation of an archetype, the gatekeeper of your light. This gatekeeper isn't you. It's the part of you you built to protect the most fragile places in your heart. They wear a mask. Strong, rational, likable. They smile for you. They speak the safe words instead of the true ones. They stand at the door of your heart and only let in those who seem safe. At first, you know they're not you, but after wearing the armor long enough, you forget. You forget who you were before you ever put it on. And then, one day, someone looks at you, so deeply that your performance doesn't have time to respond. A dream returns, and your gatekeeper quietly cries. A song plays, and no matter how many walls you've built, your soul trembles. And in that moment, your soul whispers, light doesn't need to be hidden. It just needs to be seen in the right place. The question is no longer, how do I get others to see me? But, do I dare drop this role just for a moment and step into the light for myself? You don't have to destroy the gatekeeper. Just place a hand gently on their shoulder and say, thank you for protecting me all this time. But from now on, I think I can step out. You begin to feel something shifting. Your intuition sharpens. You think of someone, and they text you. You dream of a strange symbol, and see it the next day on a random mural in the street. A number repeats so many times, it can't be a coincidence. You don't tell anyone, but you know. Something is waking up. Not out there, inside you. As if your soul just opened its eyes after a long sleep. And now, it's looking around, trying to find its way home. But the closer you feel to yourself, the more afraid you become. Not afraid of anything out there, but of what might happen if you start living from your most honest self. You don't say it out loud, but your mind whispers, if I begin to live my truth, who will walk away? If I stop pleasing, stop pretending, who will stay? You want to open that door in your heart, the one where real light can finally pour in. But when someone's hand reaches close, you close it. Quick, reflexively, like a scar that remembers the last time it was torn open. Because before the soul is set free, it often contracts, like eyes squinting in unfamiliar light, like a heart that's been shattered, tensing at the scent of love. You begin to see synchronicities everywhere, but you also start doubting yourself. Am I just imagining this? Am I going crazy for believing in something like this? Am I losing everything, just to live more truthfully? No one else hears those questions, but they echo like a gentle knock. On the door you keep opening and closing every single day. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The privilege of a lifetime isn't to be loved, not to be admired, but to become yourself. And to touch that privilege, you must walk through the fear of loss, losing the familiar, losing the old version of yourself, losing the roles that made others feel safe, but left you in pieces every night. You don't have to leap just yet. You only have to realize the light inside you doesn't need anyone's permission to be called real. It only needs you to stop hiding it from yourself. Your soul has already opened its eyes. The question is no longer, will you awaken? It's, will you have the courage not to turn away? Now that the light has started shining on the part of you that's been forgotten, there's a kind of person who enters your life without warning. They're not romantic, not flashy, not necessarily gentle, but when they appear, you tremble. Not because they've done anything wrong, but because they see you so clearly. They don't need to ask. They don't try to understand. Just one look, and you feel like every layer you've ever built has just fallen away. As if their eyes walked straight into the rooms you've always been locked from the inside. You're confused. You want to run. You want to say, "I'm fine." But somehow the walls you built, they're not holding up anymore. And in that exact moment, you realize something. They're not hurting you. They're simply touching a place you've never dared to face. Not everyone is meant to stay in your life for long. Some people come not to love you, but to trigger something ancient in you. Carl Jung called them gatekeepers, the ones who stand at the threshold of your unconscious self. They are mirrors, reflecting the shadows you haven't yet embraced. They don't come to comfort, they come to awaken. You don't know why this stranger makes you shrink and open all at once. You can't explain why something they said, so simple, made you cry. But it's because they reminded you of something you buried long ago. Maybe it was the feeling of being abandoned. Maybe it was the belief that you were unworthy of love. Maybe it was a childhood dream that never had a chance to bloom. They don't heal you. They don't have to. They simply show up, like a hand pulling back the curtain, in a room long forgotten, so you can finally face it on your own. You might hate them. You might label them a mistake. But if you look deeply enough, you'll see it was never about them. It was your soul calling you home, not back to your past, but to the part of you that's been silent for far too long. We meet again, not to begin a new story, but to complete a memory that was never fully lived. That's your soul speaking, not your heart, and your soul never lies. So if you're feeling angry, hurt, or confused by someone who has just entered your life, pause and ask yourself, what part of me did they just touch that I've spent my whole life avoiding? And if I don't run this time, what might finally be set free? There's something strange about light. Everyone says it's beautiful, sacred, redemptive, but someone who's lived in the dark for too long, they'll tell you something different. Light can hurt, not because it's cruel, but because when it shines, it reveals not just the beauty, but the cracks you've learned to hide for years. Light doesn't pick and choose. It touches everything, and that alone, it can make us pull away. there's a deep difference between being seen and being exposed. Being seen is when someone looks at you with their heart. No rush to fix you, no need for you to be perfect. Being exposed is when a glance, for a moment or a life event, makes you feel naked, like you've run out of places to hide. And that, it can be terrifying. On the path of awakening, light isn't always warm. Some days it comes like a blade, cutting through your pretending, your masks, your compromises. You thought you were evolving, but really, you were being peeled, layer by layer, of everything that was never really you. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." It sounds simple, but becoming yourself means saying goodbye to everything that isn't you, even the safe, familiar parts. And along the way, you'll meet an ancient symbol, Chiron, the wounded healer. Chiron was no warrior, no king, not perfect by any measure. He was a soul deeply wounded, and yet from that unhealed wound, he became a guide for other souls in pain. Chiron teaches us you don't have to be fully healed to help someone. You just have to sit beside the pain and not look away. Perhaps you've tried to conceal your imperfections. Told yourself, when I'm stronger, brighter, more worthy, I'll show up again. But your soul never asked for perfection. It only asks, will you stand in the light? Even while you're still breaking, because sometimes light doesn't shine through the flawless parts. It seeps out through the wounds. People often compare the soul to a Japanese pottery art called kintsugi. When it breaks, it's not thrown away. It's mended with gold. The cracks aren't hidden. They're made beautiful. They become the brightest places the light shines through. Maybe that's you. A soul cracked, patched, once called too much or not enough. But today, you're still here, still facing the pain, without running away. And that alone, it is a form of healing. And if someone enters your life not to love you, not to stay, but simply to remind you, I see you, truly, then don't reject that light, even if it stings, because only when the light comes in do you realize that wound never made you less. It was always the place where you begin to come home. No more music, no more lights, no one left to guide you. You walk through a door that feels invisible, yet somehow you know exactly where you are. It's not a foreign land. It's the place you left long ago, yourself. And there you see a child sitting, silent, not crying, not sad, not joyful, just still, waiting. And their gaze, it shakes you, because no one has ever looked at you that deeply. There are no answers here, no grand awakening, no shining light, only the truth. You've always been here, and the deepest part of you never stopped waiting. Carl Jung once wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." The very wound you tried to hide was always the doorway for light to enter. When you stop running from it, when you stop layering on masks out of fear of being seen, when you simply sit quietly, not to figure yourself out, but to simply be with yourself, something begins to melt, not pain. But the walls, the resistance inside you softens, and the door, no one needs to open it. It gently opens on its own. You realize there's no need to push forward, no more need to seek. You only need to stop leaving yourself. Maybe awakening isn't some divine collision. Maybe it's simply a quiet return to a place you once turned away from. The first feeling, the silenced memory, the pain that never had space to speak. And then, no one enters, only you and that child, clear-eyed, small hands, soft breath. They ask nothing of you. They only ask, this time, will you stay? That's the echo I want to leave with you. Not to explain, not to teach, just to sit with yourself. Once, long enough, because you see, no one out there can save you. No knowledge can feel what's flowing in your heart. No light outside of you is ever permanent. And if you're still here, sitting quietly for just a moment, then maybe your soul is remembering a promise you once forgot. So, I won't say goodbye. I'll simply step back, soft as breath, leaving a single question behind, so that when you're ready, if you stop running, who will you become?